tell on ourselves by the tracks that we leave. The bumps on our skin cannot rise high enough to shelter identity from the database of humanity. Our lifespans now measured in bytes. Open. Open. Code for God and universe, a multilog built on multiple tongues. Open, 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 let me in. Don't want to get God spammed by door-to-door trumpets. Don't want endless yarns of speech. I want a source that feels true, a highway that also stands still, that keeps me truth, and light. Let them in. Let them in. Let them in. But you might get a little give at the fringes, or static cling from the status quo. You may feel secure until questions arise, and to your surprise, your wheel is so squeaky, you're square-pegged, until your reason for being's erratic and leaking energy out in all the wrong places. Frustrating, deflating, endangering the species. What this town needs is an incubator of love, where there's bread at the table and crumbs on the ground are swept away to feed the mice and not men. Where place does not hinge on sameness. What this town needs is an incubator of love from above. What do we have? A lot. A plan, nails, wood, glue, song. A door swung wide open. What else? Carpenters and painters, mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, old and young, minor and major. A door swung wide open. What else? is a door swung wide open, an incubator of love from let's get to work. Your pain for my shoulders, my ears for your trembling tongue. the back of her head and the front of his face and the fright on their lips and the steam in our ears and the scald on his heart. See the back of her head and the front of his face and the fright on their lips and the steam in our ears and the scald on his heart. Scald on his heart. Scald on his heart. Scald on his heart. We are here to work out the soul of all folk, which ancient language, Sanskrit-critical thinking divides us. Let us not speak it, which ancient songs, Sanskrit-critical melody unmoors us. Let us not sing it, which ancient drumbeat, Sanskrit-critical steadiness spins us. Let us not tap into Let us compose with life dreaming stanzas. Dance sometimes and spare sometimes. The sound is found in the round. A Sanskrit of true. Sounds good in theory. Question is, will we walk the talk? Will we welcome those candlelit souls to hitch their dreams to this place?
Thank you so much for watching Open Source. I really hope you enjoyed the piece. I really loved the piece, and I'm thrilled to be joined by Karl Blench, who wrote the piece, and I wanted to talk with him today about how he wrote the piece, about the history of the piece, and maybe some music motifs about it. So, Karl, can you tell me about the origins of open source? How did it begin?
So Axiom Quartet was interested in commissioning a piece for the First Congregational Church in Houston. And when they were thinking about doing this, they were talking to me about it. You guys were talking to me about it. And I said, yeah, I'm on board for this. I think it would be a lot of fun to do. And I know we went back and forth about who to ask about libretto. And so we came up with our friend Jackie Sutton, and who now lives out in California. She was in Houston, now lives in California. And she agreed, and she was on board, and she and I started talking. And went back and forth about a few things, and that's how we initially got started. That's how the piece started to take shape.
Do you know much about like how Jackie researched the story of this church?
When we initially started our talks about the piece and how it was going to sort of take its shape, I was very careful about the overall narrative. Though the piece was about the church and about the church's history, I wanted to make sure that the piece could speak beyond that. And so we decided initially that it would start from sort of a dark place, this person in a dark place, and they would be seeking out light. And from there, once we had that sort of general idea, a really basic idea, Jackie then went and did her research on the church. She found some old VHS tapes about a documentary of the church with interviews of former members of the congregation, former founders of the church. And then she began to sculpt her words that way.
Wow. I remember when speaking with the church about this, the hymn of the First Congregational Church was very important. You had decided early on, if I remember right, that you were going to set one of those hymns in this piece.
So yes, you're right about the hymnal. The hymnal was really important. It's the hymnal that a lot of congregational churches use throughout the United States. And they gave me a copy. The church actually gave me a copy because I said, I'd like to go through some of these hymns and maybe see what strikes me a little bit. And was going through the first couple pages. It's traditional stuff, nothing groundbreaking, nothing different, standard church stuff that we all grew up with. But then I was flipping through and I came across this hymn called Wherever I May Wander. And played through the melody, didn't really look at the words initially. And the melody struck me because it reminded me of where I grew up. I grew up in New England. It reminded me of all the church hymns I listened to growing up in New England. It reminded me of some of the music from Charles Ives, who I'm a big fan of, and other New England composers. And I thought, okay, this hymn is really starting to speak to me here. Then I looked at the text, and the text of that hymn is it's for children. And though we don't use the text, the Uvalde shooting had just happened, and I thought, it's sort of serendipitous what's happening here. And I thought, okay, I'm going to use this hymn. This is the hymn I'm going to use in part of the work. And so actually I had set the music, I had arranged the music, reharmonized it a little bit, and sent that to Jackie. And I said, Jackie, I think this is how I might want to end the work. I want to use this hymn as a way of ending. And that actually, it inspired some of her words, particularly at the end of the piece, because of that music.
I've played a couple of your pieces before, and you always kind of talk about like finding the start. What was the beginning of working on this piece for you?
So after I got the libretto from Jackie had sent me basically an 8-movement libretto. And the first movement starts open, 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 let me in. And the image of somebody sort of knocking on a door. And so I came up with this idea, this motive called the door motive. That's the first thing you hear in the piece. And that motive is pervasive throughout the entire work. It's present in many of the movements and develops as sort of a reference point to that door. And so that's how I wanted to start the work. And for me, there was that also sense of desperation. And so that motive is very dark and stays dark, but as it comes towards the end, it gets higher and higher and higher and higher, again, sort of heading towards that light place.
It's to have a piece that's a 32-minute piece, that's one continuous movement, essentially. Can you talk about how you structure that, and maybe how you as a composer used to write shorter pieces or have always written longer pieces?
So as I've gotten older and had more opportunity, I've been able to write longer works. And so I didn't go in thinking I'm going to write a 30-minute piece of music. When Jackie sent me the libretto, it was obvious this piece was going to be of some length and some substance, and that's fine. When planning, though, I spent a lot of time with just the words and marking up the text and writing my thoughts down, memorizing the text, speaking it different ways, thinking about narrative. If I could show you the original, it's all marked up. My original libretto, I marked it up completely, has all my notes. And from there, that's how I sort of developed the narrative. I don't write from beginning to end. I wrote the middle part first, even though I had sketched the ending. One of the texts in the middle really spoke to me. So I wrote that, and then I wrote another little bit, and then I wrote the beginning, and then I wrote the end, and then I wrote the stuff in between. And then you go back and edit to sort of create the narrative. It's just like writing, I would imagine writing a book. You don't necessarily write from page 1 to 999. You sketch in between, you write little chunks in between, so you have an idea of where you're going. Same way that sort of films are made, right? They often don't shoot in sequence. They shoot a little bit here, a little bit there from this part, and then merge it together. Sort of how I worked when it came to this piece.
You spoke about the open door motive at the very beginning. Are there any other motives that are important in this piece?
The door motive is one. There is the truth and light motive that happens in the second movement, and that's in the strings. Most of the motives are in the strings. The voice really doesn't have many of the motives. That's a big one. And then the hymn representing sort of the stand-in for the church, right? That place they're heading to. Those are sort of three of the larger motives. I mean, there are a bunch of small ones that they're almost like leitmotifs in a way that reappear to reference certain things within the text. But yeah, those are the three big motives that appear.
And was there anything special about working with the singer Timothy Jones and the quartet or writing for that particular ensemble?
So Jones, I've known for a long time, basically since I've been in Houston, so about 20 years, if not over. And so it was wonderful to be able to write a piece for my friend. And then Axiom Quartet, who was obviously another group of my friends. We're all Rice graduates. So that was just a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that, to be able to work with these people.
And when working with the libretto, you talked about editing some of the libretto. Can you talk about the collaboration of editing that libretto with Jackie?
Sure, I didn't edit the libretto. I had comments about things getting too long here or there, or if I had ideas, I would pitch them to Jackie, and Jackie was very responsive to me, and we had a conversation. Her words were great. I just was wondering if there was any leeway here or there, and she was very receptive to that. And so we had a great, wonderful, collaborative working relationship.
Is there anything else that the audience might find interesting about open source, the project, or just the piece of music that you think they should know?
I've been told by some of the listeners, now you've heard it, that the piece starts unbearably dark. I think it's because I hear differently. As a composer, I think you develop ears differently than a lot of other musicians. And so for me, it just sort of sounds dark. But I'm very happy with the progression from that darkness to that light towards the end.
Something that, as I've helped produce the album and produce the visual album and thinking about the visual aspects of this album, I've thought quite a bit about trying to interact visually with that. So the video, we intentionally tried to keep it as bright and as dark as possible at the beginning of the video, and then gradually we added more and more lights towards the end of the video. I tried my hardest to start with a black fade in at the beginning and then a white fade in at the end. And I even thought about our outfits today for white and dark and lightness. It was something that I thought was such a beautiful idea. It was such a great way to take listeners through this journey. Do you have any favorite movements?
I'm very fond of the fifth movement, and I'm very fond of the last movement as well. I think so as a composer, very often you don't know, when you finish writing something, you're not sure really how it turns out until you hear it. When I finished the fifth movement, which was the first movement I wrote of the whole thing, I felt like, I think I did something here. I think I got what I wanted out.
Were there any words or words from the libretto that have stuck with you?
This is sort of a funny aside, but I just remember having this set Incubator of Love, which is not a normal set of words you would set to music. And I remember Jones thinking that was very funny, and I found that very funny. But there's a wonderful line of text in the second movement. They are souls laid down like goods for sale in the steaming marketplace. It's a great line.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about anything else?
No, so let me just turn it around here. So you guys as performers, tell me a little bit about playing the piece. Like,
I fell in love with it instantaneously.
Yeah? Well, thanks.
It was a really, really neat, and actually the piece has its challenges for sure, but the piece just kind of fell together so naturally. And we've performed it several times, and every single time we perform it, audiences absolutely love the piece. And it's a really great piece. And somehow, even though it's 32 minutes long, it never feels like that.
That's good, because that's always the thing, right? When you're a composer and you're writing long music, it's that you don't want it to feel like it's an hour. The worst thing is when it's like a 5-minute piece and it feels like 20 minutes have gone by as an audience member, and you're just you're checking your watch, you're going, when is this thing going to be over? And so you're just I'm happy to hear that the piece of that length seems to go by quickly. That's good. That's always a good thing. It's a good thing to hear. You don't want to overstay your welcome, I don't think. Yeah. Was it easy to put together, rehearsal-wise?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everything just kind of worked really well. There was a couple of challenging spots that we had to drill several times. I think the climax of the piece, one of the louder moments, it was hard to kind of line up things perfectly there. But it fell together so nicely. We of course tried rehearsing without Jones before we started playing the piece. And then when we got Jones in there, everything just made so much more sense. An interesting challenge was Jones is so dramatic as a singer. He's very theatric in how he approaches performance. And we as quartet members had to up our game a little bit so that we kind of thought about how are we presenting ourselves visually when working with a singer.
I'm trying to think if I needed to do anything for the quartet, change any of the writing for the quartet. I don't think so.
No.
I actually don't. I think when I sent everybody the music, I don't think I had to change anything, which is really nice. It's not always the case. Usually, sometimes composers will write things that musicians can't do, or things that can be awkward. I'm a trombone player, so I'm not a string player, though I've been writing for the idiom for a while. So there are always dangers, but I don't think anybody said, oh, this doesn't work, which is always nice. So that way you guys don't waste time rehearsing. which is always nice, I think.
Yeah.
Makes it a more fun process. But I was there for a lot of the rehearsals, and everybody seemed to get along with the piece okay, which was nice.
Actually, you know what I'm just remembering is when we recorded the album in the church, in the First Congregational Church. Do you remember some of the challenges we had that day?
Yeah, it wouldn't stop raining. So it kept raining, and so we had to keep cutting. We'd take these big breaks of time in between takes, where with the rain and the thunder happening, you could hear it. It was crazy. And so we had to keep taking these long breaks. And it actually worked out well for Jones because he could, and for you guys, you got to rest, and that way your mind is clear in between takes, which is always really nice. So you're a little bit fresh. So we were able to get it done. How long did it take? Maybe about, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 hours maybe, in total. But that includes all that lag time in the middle. So well, I'm glad you had fun playing it. That's always a big concern, particularly since it's a long piece, that you worry that the performer is going to lose interest. And so I'm glad, I hope you didn't find that you were like trying to find things to hold on to be interested in.
No, it was actually, the piece was so beautiful. It was so easy to be drawn into it immediately throughout the recording process and the rehearsal process. When you have a piece of music and you commission a piece of music, it often is only performed once, and you're lucky if there's a recording. With open source, we've been so lucky to have performed it several times. And now we have an album through Navona Records, which is just like an incredibly lucky thing. Something about this piece struck me as being very special, so we made a decision that we would make this as a visual album within the First Congregational Church, which is its home. How do you feel about that, Karl? It's like, it's this kind of, I think it's a really cool thing.
It's, as a composer, it's very sort of humbling that anybody would want to record your music. And so I can't thank Axiom and Jones enough, Tim Jones enough for recording this, putting it out there. The folks at Parma Music, our friends who's the company behind Navona Records, for their help bringing this to the audience. So I thank them, and I thank you guys very much.
Karl, I can't thank you enough for writing open source for us and sharing it with the world. I also want to thank you very much for being here with me today to talk more about the piece.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you guys for playing it. Thank you for recording it. It means a lot.
And thank you for watching this entire presentation today with us. It's been a pleasure making this project, and I hope you enjoyed it.
The sound is fast.